All right, I hope y'all can hear me. So, I want to talk about a few things. Basically, because there were certain conversations that people like myself and others were having a few years ago, and those discussions were not accepted. So, I'm going to play a little music and then we'll go from there. Hold on, let me see if I can get it to work.
The Queen's Piper plays the lament. Sleep, dearie, sleep.
All right, that's mostly over. So, I will type in the chat what that is. But if you watched Queen Elizabeth's funeral, you will know what it is. But I want to talk about something because there were certain conversations that Black women such as myself were having a few years ago. And pretty much what we were saying when divestment was still aligned with BWE was, well, hey, we have to be careful about other Black women who are coming into the space who have the engagement and the subscriber count to particularly dominate the conversation. And a lot of us were not heard. We were told that we were triggered by Black men. We were told that we were jealous of other Black women, when frankly, we were simply saying to the other content creators in the BWE and divestment spaces that, hey, if these other women come in and they take your talking points and you don't get any sort of reciprocity, they will become the faces of this conversation. And that's what's happened when it comes to BWE. Okay? And I'm going to be very specific here and I'm going to say names here. I don't really care how people feel about it. I mean, you can share your opinions with me, but your opinions are not going to change mine. Okay? So I was looking at the other Black women in this space, right? And then I was looking at like Black women like Cynthia G, Paris Milan, and Chrissy. And I was looking at the Black women content creators who frankly had more engagement than I do. And I was saying, like, hey, if they come here and have these conversations, you're not going to be the face of it. So now we speed forward a few years and we see, right, that when people think of BWE, I mean, I'm all over social media. So when people think of BWE, the first name they think of is Cynthia G. Another name they think of is Paris Milan. And then they also think of Chrissy. And so on the one hand, just like Black woman to other Black women, I am happy for their success. On the other hand, as a Black woman in this space who has been around, I'm looking at these other content creators and I'm like, well, you allowed them to come in and be the face of conversations that you were a part of before they were, right? And when Black women such as myself were saying, well, hey, we need to protect our spaces, I'm just being really honest. It was not Cynthia or Paris or Chrissy that was calling us radical, toxic, or extreme. It was these other so-called BWE content creators who have been around for years who were assigning those labels to divested Black women. Right? That's why, if you notice, I'm very particular about the names that I mention when I say, well, hey, these are the women that I'm inspired by. Because these are the Black women who had these conversations when it was unpopular. They didn't try to attach their names to other Black women. They came from a genuine place. And they did so at a time where Black women were threatening to be doxxed and frankly, in some cases, physically harmed. They were not saying that it was radical, toxic, and extreme to be concerned about your self-preservation. They were not saying that it was radical, toxic, and extreme to care about preserving our spaces. And to be completely honest, you know, when it comes to Cynthia G, she's not as nasty towards divestors as certain other Black women are. I don't agree with her when it comes to a lot of things, but I don't think she's necessarily someone that I would say is anti-divested. She's just a Black woman that in certain situations, I don't agree with her. But I understand where she's coming from. Because the men that she supported dragged the fuck out of her when she went through a situation that was very sensitive. From time to time, I can't watch Paris because some of her content falls under that anti-divestment umbrella, right? But at the same time, I don't find her to be someone that is disingenuous. She's been very clear about her position. So if you like her channel, you like it. If you don't, you don't. When it comes to Chrissy, she's another one that I throw under that anti-divestment umbrella because I don't like the way that she has certain commentary about us. But I do think that it's cool that there is a space that is very dedicated to phenotypically Black women. But my issue is that you have certain Black women who never wanted to be aligned with BWE or divestment, right? You never wanted that ministry, which is fine. But then when you look around and you see, okay, these other women have come around and became the face of some shit that you originated, and now you have a problem, and now we're all supposed to defend the very bitches that try to align us with toxicity. That's where I have a problem with you hoes. Because you all never cared about preserving original BWE. You never cared about divestment. You never wanted to be associated with it. So now when you look around and these other Black women have done the very same thing that me and others warned you against, now you have a problem with it. But you all have to understand something. When it gets to a point where content creators have national visibility, they don't have to acknowledge you. If somebody comes in your house and they take all your shit and they're able to throw you out, they don't have to acknowledge you. But that's what's happened with BWE. When certain other women, because there's another bitch that has almost 200,000 subscribers, and she was saying that divestors deserve to be doxxed and exposed to our family members and friends, as if the people we're close to don't know how the fuck we feel. But they also were saying that we deserve to be doxxed to our employers. It was some of you who are supposedly OG BWE saying that you agreed with them, right? But now that they have come into your shit and they have taken your shit and they've become the face of your shit, now you're upset. You don't understand the concept of self-preservation. Self-preservation means that if you allow it, people will come in and they will steal your shit. You didn't have the foresight to copyright or trademark your original ideas. You didn't think it was necessary to align yourself with conversations about divestment. You didn't think it was necessary to align yourselves with conversations about BWE. You thought that if you could come into these spaces and be quote unquote friendly to Black men, that they would treat you any differently. And it's like, well, no, they're not. They're not. They don't have to. And then you look at other Black women who generally say, okay, as a rule of thumb, you don't owe your money to anyone unless you want to give it. I have no problem with supporting, other Black women. I have no problem with that at all. But my issue is people who think that it's a requirement. That's my problem. And the other thing that I am well aware of is that some of these difficulties between content creators is from other content creators who like to be in the shadows. They like to do shit behind troll accounts. They like to do shit in spaces where they're not seen. But best believe I see you bitches loud and clear. Okay? Because listen, I saw the live stream that Cerebral made talking about Paris, and there was no reason for that discussion to be had publicly. Okay, Paris was not talking about Cerebral. She was very clear about who she was speaking of. She was speaking of a pro-Black woman who is married, who asked for donations, and she was basically saying, okay, you have a whole grown-ass man that has married you. So why do you need donations for something that is very basic? And Cerebral and other content creators have to be very careful about allowing subscribers to get you hyped up because at the end of the day, YouTube is like any other business. And I say this as a person who has a very small channel, right? YouTube is like any other business. You're going to sink or swim. Some of us are going to be more visible than others. But it's not right. She said she was talking about Shed Sade. But it's not anybody else's fault that you didn't see what was taking place. And it's not just you, it's other content creators. Crystalline, Kendall, all of them. They did not see what was going to happen when you had Black women who already had sizable platforms coming into these spaces and having the conversations. And frankly, they were the very women who looked at divestors and said, oh no, they're radical, toxic, and extreme, so we're not like them. But guess what? That doesn't mean that the women who support Cynthia and Paris and Chrissy will align with you. When other people can come through and take your shit, they don't have to respect you. They don't have to acknowledge you. And at the end of the day, the genuine originators of these conversations are no longer on YouTube. You can go back to the days of Khadijah, Evia, Halima, Isadora Storm, Ejaban. They were having these conversations when people were threatening to dox them. You can go back to the days of Wigtow, Black women going their own way. You can go back to those days where people were threatening their lives and they were still having those conversations. You can go back to the days of Black women in comment sections who were threatening to be doxxed, right? But at the end of the day, when you had the Black women who were gatekeeping these spaces, deciding to allow these formerly Black women in, it's kind of like, okay, they came through and they took your shit. They came through and they became the face of some shit that you didn't care enough to protect. Right? They came through and collected. They collected your subscribers, they collected your money, and they collected your visibility. And it's not anyone's fault because you allowed it. Because again, it was these women who now want to be viewed as originators calling us radical, toxic, and extreme. Right? But let's be clear, the divestors are the ones who come through with the monetary support. We're the ones who are supporting your classes and all of these little rinky-dink programs that you had, right? But when you thought it expedient, you casted us aside. And so now the concept of BWE has been bastardized, but it's your fault. It's your fault. Because if a woman has 300,000 plus subscribers, 200,000 plus subscribers, 100,000 plus subscribers, and national visibility, she doesn't have to acknowledge you. Why would she do that? We talk about being self first, right? So if you're self first, why the fuck would I have to acknowledge you when you didn't even care about your own shit? You didn't. Not only did you not care about it, but you had one bitch on here who has called into several Black men's platforms. And she called into Kitten Hill's show. And he asked her, well, what would you call the sector that you're associated with? And she wouldn't say BWE. She wouldn't say divestment. She wouldn't say swirling. She said, oh, we're a loose conglomeration. Well, okay, bitch. That's fine. So if you don't acknowledge us, then we don't owe you shit. These bitches were saying that they felt like the Black manosphere was a good thing because according to them, maybe Black women would get it. They're the ones that actually hate you, because they were doing content with these niggas. They were having private conversations with these niggas. So when other women come in and they see the value of the content and the value of the space, and they can take it and go places that frankly you were too brain dead to go to, that's not their fault. That's yours. You didn't value what you had. And it's what y'all deserve. And that's why I continue to tell y'all BWE and divestment are separate, because you would never see that happen with divestment. And the real problem that you have with divestment platforms is that there are divestment platforms that are going to grow in ways that you all never thought they would. But it's your fault. And it's the growth that we deserve. Consistency and being solid will take you far. Well, on some level, how far does that acknowledgement go, though? Because again, if I'm able to come into your house and take your shit, I don't have to acknowledge you. I don't have to. I took your shit. If you were that bitch, I wouldn't be able to come through and take it. But you're correct. Not only did Paris and Chrissy acknowledge them, Cynthia did too, if I'm being completely objective. But it's like you said, how many times do I have to say it? Because at the end of the day, if I can take your shit and take it to a place that you couldn't go, then bitch, I'm that girl. Because I can do some shit that you cannot do. And that's just the harsh reality that a lot of people don't want to accept. Who is this? Oof, I don't know who that is. Oof, the P Philly did do that. Yeah, but at the end of the day, again, what I'm trying to get y'all to understand is that if you allow people to come into your space and they can take your thoughts and ideas and propel them to a place that you didn't have the foresight to do, that's not their fault. That's yours. Because listen, I don't have too much for her, because when it comes to the piss pill, there are blog posts from over 10 years ago where other Black women were talking about her copying their content. Copying and bastardizing their content. Right. She wrote the book, but then wouldn't even acknowledge the word. But then when you have other Black women who have no problems acknowledging that they exclusively interracial date, or that they support those of us who do, then it's like, well, you need to acknowledge me. Well, bitch, you didn't even rep yourself. You didn't claim yourself. And that's the reality. Nobody is going to acknowledge you when you don't even properly brand yourself. No one is going to acknowledge you when other women came into your space and took over it. Nobody's going to. And I'm just really tired of constantly seeing Black women who kind of feel like, well, I was here before this person, and therefore I should have the same things that they have. And it's like, well, okay, but they were able to come through and take your shit. If you cared about it, because see, this is the reality. If these bitches cared about the space, then you would not have needed smaller content creators like myself talking about, well, hey, we have to be concerned about these women who were formerly pro-Black coming in and co-opting our conversations, I wouldn't have had to say it, right? Because they would have said, well, wait a minute. I'm the queen of this shit, so you don't come in here unless I properly vet you. But they didn't do that. They didn't do it. They didn't care about it. They looked at us and said, well, no, these girls are radical, toxic, and extreme. So yeah, we support you guys. And guess what those women did? They said, okay, you look funny as fuck if you don't support the women who have been here with you for years, so we don't trust you. And I don't blame them for having that point of view. But it's like I said, the BWE content creators who were here prior to 5 years ago are not going to get the recognition that they deserve because they didn't require it. And since they sat around and called me and other divestors radical, toxic, and extreme, it's not my job to help you get it. You don't get anything that you don't require. The only respect that you get in life is that which you require. People are not going to do anything out of any fidelity or whatever because, bitch, why? You got to think about it. If you have a platform of hundreds of thousands of subscribers, why would you lend your audience to people who have less views and engagement than you? Why would you do that? It wouldn't make sense even from a business perspective. But see, even though these bitches claim to be able to talk to you about business, they don't know shit. They spend so much time trying to belittle divestors and trying to just hound those of us with smaller channels that they didn't even see the real issue that they were going to have. And now they're seeing it and they're upset about it, but they should only be upset with themselves because they allowed it. All right, but anyway, I'm going to go now and grab myself some food. I hope y'all have a good Sunday. But yes, BWE has officially been co-opted and taken over by those who did not originate these conversations. But it's because the women who were the pioneers in the space allowed it. So don't feel bad when they complain. Because again, understand that those were the very women who were calling you and I radical, toxic, and extreme. And the day will come where you will have divested channels surpass those very women. Okay? Anyway, happy Sunday. We'll talk soon.